Hi, I'm Eileen Bild. I'm with Hotel Talk, and I am thrilled today to have two wonderful ladies who are co-contributors for Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. And we have Judy Lemon and Jess Campmans. How are you ladies doing today?
Doing really well. Wonderful.
Good to hear that.
Excellent.
Good to hear that. So Miss Judy Lemon, she is a shamanic practitioner and somatic experiencing trauma therapist who brings years of comprehensive training and knowledge into her work. And I can't wait to get into that. And then Jess Campmans is an equine guided sacred messenger, and her background is a lifetime of growing up with horses and working with horses. So again, I can't wait to dive into who Jess is. Both of you ladies have very dynamic backgrounds in your story and how you got to where you are today and what you do to help people. So Judy, I wanted to ask you, your journey requires that we grow. You know, we can't stagnate. If we stagnate, things kind of fall off and we don't see potential for the future. You also believe that we get the guidance that we've been needing to take that next step. So tell me, what part of your life journey helped you to realize this?
If I look back through all the things that I've experienced in my life so far, I'd have to say there isn't just one part of my life journey, but rather very many. My guidance has always come from within. When I've been taking those really big steps, the guidance comes in like a whoomph, and then I just instinctively know that I have to follow those directions. I guess I've been fortunate being as contrary, as my mother used to say, that I was, that I actually listened to spirit, even if I didn't listen to my parents.
Yeah, well, and that's, you know, I think that's what some people miss out on is they don't pay attention to those little voices or nudges. And then they have some challenges with life and life experiences. And so part of your teachings and part of your training is to help them to value and appreciate those and see those as a normal part of life.
Yeah, I quite a lot of the students that I get they ask me, how can I trust the voice within? Or I think I hear something, but I think I'm making it up. Right. Or I really want to meet my spirit guides. You know, I don't think I have any. Everybody has spirit guides. And what I've learned is, once I trained with the somatic experiencing, which really works with the sensations in the body, is that you learn to feel the different spirit energies in different ways in your body. So you know, oh, that one, I don't think I'm going to work with that one. That doesn't feel good to me. Oh, here comes my main guide. He always makes my face twitch. You know, that kind of a thing. So once you learn to trust that, you go with it all the time, and you're in what we call the flow. And when you listen to it, you never go wrong.
I can see that. That's awesome. So Jess, banking on what she just said, because I saw you kind of nodding and seeing some familiarity with what she was saying, you like to say that you help a person connect with the intuitive and that innate wisdom within to nurture and become more harmonious with the relationship with the body and the deep soul, the animal spirit, and the magic of the universe. And you label it as becoming the living legacy of yourself. I love that. So Tell me more about that.
I would love to. Everything that Judy said, or that you were talking about, those challenges, and listening to your parents over your inner wisdom, that's how I grew up. Because I was highly empathic and highly intuitive, but I didn't know what to do with all of those things. So I would feel this stuff, and without knowing what it was or why people were acting like this, I turned to the animals. And so I would always be outside in nature and with the animals, and they were my sacred space and my saving grace, until they kind of started showing me and reflecting to me who I was, that I really wasn't being myself. And it's still a journey that unfolds, and I love it. It's so amazing, because as I began to open up to this, I realized that all of these things that were curses to me, why I didn't like being around people, was actually a huge gift in disguise, being able to tune into them and their animals through them, and have their animals help them and tell them and explain to them why this is all happening in their life. And so it's tapping into that soul wisdom that every single one of us has. I mean, plants and animals, the universe included, to be able to help you create a more harmonious relationship.
Well, I've always believed that the difference between humans and animals is animals have unconditional love and they don't judge you.
Yes.
And so I'm sure as you felt that love, that unconditional love from the animals, that made more sense than whatever the adults were showing or people were showing around you. I'm just curious, at what age would you say that you truly felt that first connection with the horses? And what was it like?
I think right from when I was little, like I was riding in a backpack with my dad before I could walk, and I was always enthralled with horses in particular. So it's just been, well, I think it's been over lifetimes. I can definitely say that, but it's just all encompassing. Everything that I am is woven through the fabric of the horse.
Interesting.
So it's just, yeah.
So if I were to call you the horse whisperer, what would that imply as far as your connection with horses?
I love that term, and there's actually almost an evolution to that, because it's I call it the evolution of relationship, because it's a communication to be in that relationship with. So I'm not really whispering, but I'm listening to what they're telling me in order to communicate with them on basically a telepathic level, where I don't even think it. Like they send me a picture. And a really good experience, or a really good story around this, was a couple of years ago. I had a 3-year-old stallion who all of a sudden I just had this sense of climbing up on the fence and get on his back. And I'd never ridden him before. And he's a 3-year-old stallion, so kind of notorious for being untamed and wild. And so I climbed up on the fence, and he walked right up to the fence and stood there and waited for me. And I climbed on his back. And so things like that, more listening, right, to that, to how they are trying to communicate with us. And I believe we all have that ability. And so it's just being able to tune into that realm of being able to listen and then also communicate back with them.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So Judy, you found over, I don't know if it was your experience in the Amazon, but there was more to the universe than meets the eye. And I wholeheartedly believe that we tend to blind ourselves just because of how we're raised not to open up to what is available beyond the eyes. And learn that through intent, it's possible to cause changes in the material world by changing the energetic world. So tell me more about that.
This is one of those things that's probably a little hard to put into words, but the premise of most magical or manifestation systems is not only to see the outcome that you're looking for in your mind's eye, but to also feel it. And then when you can get into a state of trance, you're able to access what we would call, or at least what I call, the void. There are other names for the place, like sometimes people call it all that is, or maybe the Akashic records. It's the source of where all creativity comes from. And, if you've ever been totally engrossed in a task, like somebody writing a story or music, where you're drawing your inspiration from, you lose all sense of time and, where you are. So the biggest part that I find of manifesting like this is that you actually have to make work done in the physical world too. Sometimes the magical community can woo-woo, when people are like, oh, I'm just going to throw it out to the universe. That doesn't do anything. We are physical beings, we are spiritual beings, we're dual. So you can't just throw it out to the universe. You actually have to do some work too. So, I mean, for example, if you were looking for a job, you don't just like, oh, please bring me a job or give me some money. You actually have to go into the job listings and apply. Or you're looking for a partner, oh, please send me the partner of my dreams. Well, download some dating apps. If spirit sees that you're going to be an active partner, then the universe supports you, but you also have to know what you want. You have to know what you want, but then also let go of the exact form that it comes in. This is something that I've learned through many years. Many people say, like, I want it to be exactly like this to fit in this box. But what happens is the thing that they could have is actually much more magnificent, but it's outside the box. So what we learn to do is to get rid of the walls of the box. And then here comes this thing that you never could have dreamed of, but it's so much more amazing than like what you initially asked for.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I think, that's a key point, and someone opening themselves up to that listening and that intuitive self. Uh, a word that came to mind is time standing still. So I wanted to ask both of you what that means to you as far as when you're working with the horses, Jess, and Judy, when you're working with clients. Um, what comes to mind when I say that? So, Jess.
I guess the biggest thing is just being in the present moment, because when you're in the present moment with a horse, nothing else ceases to exist. And that's where this whole sense of feel, timing, and balance that can apply to horsemanship and working with horses in a healing realm, and also to everything that Judy was saying. And I love what she said, because that's exactly how I had it, was this box of being a horse trainer. And all of a sudden working with horses in this manner just opened up to something that was so big and beautiful and beyond that box. Yeah. And so being in that space took me out of that focus and into such a bigger realm that time, I mean, I could be out there an entire day and it feels like I was maybe out there an hour.
Yeah.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with animals in nature, it's like you get taken and it's like you're transported into another realm, another world, and everything just works like clockwork and flows, and then you have to come back out and it's like, where am I? where did I just come from? So Judy.
Well, one of the places that I get my inspirational downloads lots of times is my kitchen sink. So when I'm washing my dishes, sometimes a saying comes in, and one came in once that said, when you live in the moment, you live beyond time. Mm. And I went, wow, what does that really mean? But it's like what we've been talking here. When you get into that void or that amazingly juicy space, there's no sense of time. Or, sometimes you lose sense of your body too. You get that sense of like amazing presence, like how much bigger than we are than just this.
Yes, I like that. Um, so while you were talking about that, a thought came to mind for me on I used to wear watches.
Mm.
And then when I started to practice being in the moment, being in the now, being present, I no longer needed the watch because time had its own time. I guess that's the best way I could say it. And, I mean, I have to look at the time just to make sure I'm not going to be late to an appointment, but I don't use time like I used to, where wearing a watch, it was like I felt I was, once I started to understand being present and listening to that higher self and that inner soul, um, time almost became like a prison. It becomes you become too attached to it. And think about it, if you're always rushing to be on time, you're going to be stressed and you're going to not feel like you're doing the right things because you're always late or you're sometimes way too early. So I like that what you two ladies offer is the opportunity to have that time stand still and give people the opportunity to feel what it's like to be timeless, to be in that space of nothingness, but yet everything is available.
Yeah, I think the concept of time is so much more prevalent in like the Western culture. A lot of the indigenous people I've worked with have a very of the world. And it was frustrating when I would first start working with them because my thing was like, well, you said that we were going to go to the market at noon, but then here comes a neighbor, here comes somebody else. And then we would walk out and they were totally in this sense of void and they were doing what was right in the moment. And they knew that eventually we'll get to the market. But, back in the early days, I would start twitching and was like, it's getting late. Oh my God, it's not noon anymore. Where once I learned to be a little bit more like them or see the world through their eyes, it's just like you said, like we can relax a little bit. Everything will get done that needs to get done.
Exactly. Yes. So Jess, I like your statement that you have. Mysteries become miracles through the life transforming work of sacred insight for soul restoration, helping humanity heal in harmony with horses guided by the wisdom of Equius. I hope I said that word right.
Equus, yes, yeah.
So tell me, what is that all about?
I don't know where that came from, but I think it's kind of been building on itself for a couple of years. And well, I guess I do know where it came from, that all of these things that were a mystery to me, and I spoke about a number of them in book one of the Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformation. But I touch on it in this book too, just about why is this happening? And it was never to me, like, why is this happening to me? Although I knew like this is happening to me for a reason, but why? And why can't what is the answer? Because it's never been enough to just like accept that, okay, well, this horse is dying a really traumatic death, or this is the 6th or 7th horse that this has happened to now in a row. And there's something that is in me that I'm not getting. And so it was, I guess, really tapping into that innate wisdom that comes from that realm of being in alignment with the soul, kind of like what Judy was talking about. And when you're in that timelessness, it's because you're connected to your soul or connected to the soul of the animals or the universe. And that's where the answers are. So all of these things that are a mystery to us, like, why do I have this pain? Or why is this relationship seem like it's falling apart? Because the answers exist within us. But until we recognize that the outside world is showing up to help us with this, it seems like we're just never going to get there. And why is something that is driven me for my entire life. And so these mysteries actually become miracles, because as soon as I understood why all these horses were dying, it was to help me. And that might sound kind of weird if you don't understand it, but it gave me a whole perspective on death, that I then understood the aspect of our infinite soul, that they needed to leave their body so they could help me in the form of spirit. And by leaving their body, they actually helped me come to a realization. And so I guess that's one instance. And it just, I mean, I have so many stories about that, just this experiential wisdom of being able to find the why of what this is. And then it actually helped me be able to help people. Like, why do I have so much frustration or anger? And tapping into that, it becomes quite apparent when you're doing it for someone else after you've done it for yourself, because you don't have to excavate all of these things that you don't even know why they're there. And in somebody else, it's just easy to see, well, this animal's helping you with this, or this is happening in your life because of this. So, and they're miracles if you can see them from that point of view.
I like that. It's almost transforming the perspective. And by transforming the perspective, then you have a different insight into what's showing up in life. And then that helps you to heal or to understand. And then, of course, you use the horses as as a tool, we could say, to facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Judy? So you've done shadow work, and do you do shadow work with your clients as well? Or do you just, yes, okay. So you say healing through your shadow and getting to your core purpose is easier than you think. And I say, okay, how do you make it easy? Because everybody I know that's gone through the dark night of the soul, or, deals with that shadow side, it's a struggle for them. So I'd love to hear your take on how it can be easy.
Well, I think, and I'm just speaking through my own experience here, one thing is to not pretend that the or the shadow side doesn't exist. It kind of amazes me to see how many people think, oh, I can't possibly have a side. Everything is like angels and light. That would be nice, but even the moon has a dark side. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but there are things that are just maybe below the conscious level. And especially in my work as a trauma therapist, this is what we want to bring out, because this is what causes the patterns to keep repeating. So the thing is if you are willing to face the shadow stuff, then you let go of these things that are holding you back from moving on in your life. And you're right, there are times when it can be really painful, but I find that if, as a therapist or healers, we're able to hold a good space for somebody, people cannot easily let go or to go into their pain body when they don't feel safe. So if we can create a loving, safe atmosphere for them, they're much more able to go into that. So basically, acknowledge that the shadow side exists, and then be willing to stand up to it. It's like back in the old days when I used to watch cartoons, there used to be these little characters, and you'd see one of them running, and then there'd be this great big shadow like coming after, and you'd hear the music, boom, 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 and the little character would be terrified. But eventually he would stop and he'd be like, all right, I'm going to turn around you. And the moment he would turn around and face the shadow would immediately shrink and turn into like a little yappy dog and go running off, into the horizon. That's what I find. Like when we can put a name to the shadow or the fear, it just goes shoo.
I bet that's liberating. for the clients to be able to face it fearlessly.
It is. It's not necessarily something that happens in one session, but it lifts off with layers. And I can always see it on them because sometimes they'll come in here and they're kind of gray and hunched over and they think, oh, nobody knows what I'm going through. I'm all alone. But then we start working on this. And then even after, sometimes even after one session, I see in their face, they're standing up a little stronger. They've got a little bit more spring in their step. And like, I love that.
Yeah.
It's possible.
It's a miracle, like what Jess
Exactly.
described. Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. Yes.
Yes.
And
Beautiful.
in the
Yes.
shadow is where you find the biggest pieces of gold. That's what I've found.
Yes, I agree. Yes. That's why we don't want to be afraid to look.
Right.
You go looking around in the dark where people are afraid, you're going to find this big nugget. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So, Jess, you talk about bridges connect worlds. And in order to become the bridge that the world needs us to be, we must embrace our innate guidance system to connect with and harness the power of our why and the intrinsic soul purpose within us. And we've talked, you both have talked about kind of the why. So share a little bit more about that.
I guess I could say probably every single one of us are a bridge for something, because we have this soul urge or soul purpose that we come to this life to, to walk this path on. And yet we also bring with us this thing that kind of, let's say, hinders us from really just taking that step to do it. And so it's finding that bridge to cross between both of those worlds and find a balance, I guess, is a really good way to put it. Because as you're connecting this world of matter and physicality with who you are as a soul and spirit, you get to bring the energies of both to be able to support you and this whole living life around you and everybody that's part of it. And when you do that, you tap into, I guess, the ability to access both worlds, but the gifts that are within each of them, right? Like Judy was saying, and like I know you've kind of spoken about too, you can't just be all up here. We have a body, and in order to bring it into action in the world, we actually have to take action on it, right? Like sitting in a cave meditating is wonderful, but that's not where you're going to come up against, let's call them challenges or struggles, that are actually going to help you have the courage to be who you are, or to take that step and say, this is what I believe in, and this is what I stand for, or this is how I'm going to help or uplift or enable by doing this for me and for others too.
Yeah.
So I have a question. How do you see the horses as part of that bridge? So when you're working with clients and the energy of the horse and the messages, what is that, how is that experienced?
That's a really good question. They are phenomenal at this work. I mean, they've been doing it for thousands of years. And it doesn't seem to matter if someone's in person or even in a video session like this. If I was with them right now, they would be almost constellating what we're talking about, or if it was with a client, and constellating being kind of showing up to show you what's going on that we can't see for ourselves. And then at the same time, they're also helping move that energy in a way that animals know how to do to keep their vital life force going and thriving. Like they're not just surviving, they're thriving. Anyways, these horses that do this as quote unquote work, just like us as healers have to, right? If you're just in survival mode, you're not going to be able to be as capable as you are, because you have to access the fact that we're not even doing this. We're just a channel for for this energy. So that's kind of what the horses do, is they help shift the energy and move it, and show up to reveal and mirror, I guess, what you need to see, or what I need to see to understand, to help you understand. So I kind of become a translator for it too.
So, yeah, so actually, I'm going to ask both of you this question off of what you just said, Jess. What percentage would you say of people that you work with and or society in general is in that survival mode?
I don't know what Judy would say. I don't know if I'd come up with a percentage, but I would probably say a lot without.
Yeah, I couldn't give it a big number out there. My goodness, especially this year, you know, I think they're just hanging on by the thinnest threads.
Yeah.
But, you know, even before this all happened, I think there's a great lot out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think that people are in survival mode because they don't have that inner connection, they don't have that deeper connection, and that they're more so in their head than their heart? And a lot of people, if you ask them, who are you, they might have that deer in the headlight look and not be able to answer. Judy, I'm curious. You'd mentioned, and I know based on what I know about you, you had a life-changing journey experience when you went to the Peruvian Amazon. You went there for a retreat, and I'm sure it was eye-opening. I'm sure it was magical. I'd love to hear what that experience was like and how that changed your life.
The story in a nutshell was that experience was the door that I had to walk through to become who I am now. My biggest dream for my life was that I was going to be a big rock star. I started playing guitar when I was 7, and I'm also vocally trained. And, you know, I would picture myself in front of these big arenas. And I had been a professional musician, and that's why I ended up moving to England. But it wasn't what I was supposed to do. I've actually written a full-length book called Machete Woman. It's still kind of in the editing phase, but it's completed. And it's about this journey. But it's basically Spirit had to call me home from my delusional rock star dreams so that I could be doing what I'm doing now. So through a series of events, and this was kind of like what Jess was saying earlier about how we don't always see what's going on while we're in it, but later on we can kind of look back and see how Spirit lined up the dominoes for us, and everything suddenly makes sense. So basically, you know, I met somebody who had been to the jungle. They mentioned something about plant spirit, blah, 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 blah. I found myself there. My first experience with ayahuasca and San Pedro. And then I was the only one in the group that spoke Spanish. So I was able to speak to the 2 shamans who were leading the retreat. And I told one that, oh, hey, you know, I want to be a healer, but I don't exactly know what kind. I just knew that I wanted to do something. And basically through that, he kind of peered at me the way they do, kind of like looking into your soul to kind of see your character. And then sometime later he said, I'm looking for an apprentice. If you want to come back and live in the jungle with me, teach you this path. I had no idea what this path was or what I was getting myself into, but I just thought, oh, cool. I'm Carlos Castaneda with Don Juan. You know, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but that alone is what set me on the shamanic healing path.
That is so interesting. Well, you'll have to let us know when the Machete Woman comes out, because I'm sure that's a dynamic story and might be of interest to a lot of people. So, yeah. So Jess, that leads into your story in the Crappy to Happy book is about the journey of becoming the calling of our soul. So I'd be curious to hear what does it mean to have a journey of becoming the calling of our soul?
So in kind of a similar door opening into this whole new, bigger, broader experience that is kind of waiting for us to just step into once we find these first dominoes. There's a couple things in my life that are still in my head and heart. Like those were the doorways that when I went through them, I realized there's no going back. One is I think I had 4 kids at the time already, and my second daughter was waking up every night with nightmares, like in terror.
Mm.
And she would come running upstairs and say, it's going to get me. It's going to get me. And so finally I thought, like, I believe in this. There's something that I need help with this. And I had a lady who was a Reiki master. I came across her on Facebook, lo and behold, how universe works in synchronistic ways. So I called her up and I said, I don't know what this is, but it sounds like you could help me. This is what's going on. So she came and she did a house clearing, especially in the room of my daughter, who there was we live in the house where my husband grew up, and 2 of his brothers who had both passed, that was their room.
Mm.
And so she started lighting these candles and saying, like, do you feel the angels around us and these guides? And I just remember the tears pouring down my face. And I was like, I knew this was real. And she's looking at me like, well, of course it's real. And I didn't know how to tell her. Nobody's ever held this door open for me. And it was just like, I finally recognized that this was part of who I am. So that was one. And then the second one was a story that is in this book, that we were sitting in this first ever horse healing workshop that I'd been to, and I accidentally didn't book myself a plane. So I ended up driving the 20 some hours down there, which in itself was fascinating because I got to be alone by myself for the first time in a long time, and on this drive through no man's land. And so we're sitting in this group and we were asked to, if you were a horse, what would be your name? And I knew right away. It was mystical warrior. And it's funny because even prior to this interview, that keeps coming, like spirit warrior or warrior spirit. And that's what I thought it was, because I was kind of, thinking about this interview a little bit. And I don't know if I realized it then that was the expression of my soul, was this mystic warrior that is coming here to help, work with horses and in helping people heal by finding who they really are. And so I had to find who I really was first. But I just remember sitting there telling this whole group and thinking like, oh, they're just going to laugh at me. But nobody there laughs at you because we're all there for the same purpose. Mm. But that's what I had hidden for so long, was this mystic that could feel, and this warrior spirit. I mean, physically I'm very strong and I love that strength, but I think that also is coupled with an inner strength that I didn't know what to do with. So I kind of turned it against myself until I realized that there's this intuitive aspect that when I bring all of these pieces together, so that was another door that I was just like, I'll never forget that.
And it's rewarding when you make that discovery. And I'm sure a lot of your clients have that discovery for themselves as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Judy, you look like you were going to say something.
No, I'm just, loving listening to this. Like, I love talking about these kind of subjects. Go on all day, just, learn something new and just, yeah.
Well, I think, when you find yourself with like-minded people, we all understand that we've been through similar experiences, maybe in different ways, but it's all like this opening and this guiding and this leading to something bigger and greater that's greater than us, but also a part of us. And there's a need for people to heal and help people in these aspects. Because as we said earlier, there's a lot of people who are just kind of living like zombies and they're not connected and um, they're just kind of lost souls and they don't know where to turn. So it's good to know that there's people out there with different modalities. So if someone loves horses, they have Jess who they can turn to. If someone likes shamanic work, they have Judy they can turn to. Um, which leads me, Judy, to my next question. Your path took you down a different road than expected, and there were mystical teachings that shaped who you are today and what you do. So, you want to highlight some of your mystical teachings that came on your path?
I think what I was talking about this too was realizing the other worlds are real. And when you actually start experiencing those, for the first time, like you get all tingly and you're like, oh, wow. I mean, for example, one of the reasons that I continue to go to the jungle is I go down there to do very strict plant diets. Those help open up my abilities. That's where I work on my stuff, but it's also where I get more of my spirit allies, which we call the Dr. Citos or the little doctors. So the diets are very strict. We have to be hidden away in a dieting hut called a tambo, barely eating anything. It's great if you want to lose weight. You can't use products with chemicals like shampoos, soaps, deodorants. You get very smelly, but that's okay. The idea is that you become one with the jungle so that the spirits will come to you. So I remember one night that I was just lying in bed thinking like, oh, it's going to be a long night, can I just fall asleep? And I was in this little house that was up on stilts and I had to climb up a ladder and go through a trap door to get into it. So all of a sudden I felt like the ground shake, not like an earthquake, but as if something big in the house. I felt the ladder shake and then it was like dancing around on the floor. And I sat up and I went, whoa, what's that? I wasn't afraid because I thought like, I'm here to meet the spirits. So guys over here, like give me some knowledge or something. And basically as soon as I greeted him, it stopped. But there was all sorts of things like that. Sitting in my hammock during the daytime, broad daylight, perfectly aware like I am now, and something would hit me on the head. I would turn around and think like, oh, it's a rat that fell on me, but there's nothing there. Or I would hear my name, a little spirit going, Judy. And I'd be like, I'm over here. So it's just things like that. Or in the past, I also worked with a group where we helped spirits who were stuck after they had just passed, or well, no, some of them have been stuck for centuries. And when I watched some of my cohort channel a 15th century sea captain, the voice changes, the actions change. People would tell a story. They would be back in another time, very clear. And I went, we don't die. We truly do not die. It was the first time I realized that our souls are immortal, like, they taught like religion that I grew up in. But this time I saw it. So like when my dad was dying, I was able to kind of help ease his fear a bit by telling him like, you're not going to be dead. It sounds kind of weird, but you don't actually die. And I've since spoken to him. It's been 7 years now to ask like, what's it like on the other side? And when you have experiences like that, you realize there's so much more to this existence. And I love that. I can't imagine now just only living in the physical. It would be so dull, I guess, or limited.
Well, yeah, and because you're so open and you've had those experiences, I would think that you view life in the physical in a different way where it's more accepting and allowing, and you see the beauty every day versus that 3D, the negativity and what pulls everybody's energy. But you're able to stay in that sacred space of the knowledge of there's a lot more to this.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's made me more appreciate the simple things instead of feeling like, oh, I need to be entertained. One of the things I asked my dad, once he had left, do you have any advice for me? And he said, live in whole fully, enjoy your time on this earth, because he goes, once you're back here in the spirit, he goes, it's great, but he goes, there's a lot of things you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that I knew, I was talking to my dad, he goes, I miss working with my hands. He goes, I don't have any hands where I am. He was the electrician, he was the plumber, he was an engineer, he started the garden. He loved his workshop. And he goes, that's what I miss. So he said, like, eat the chocolate, drink the wine, do this, be very physical, because your time here is good. You think it will be. And I think that's made me really appreciate just anything, the simplest things.
I like that. I love that. So, Jess, what have your horses helped you discover?
I feel like I think I have something on my website that this is part of, but what inspires us is what heals us. And there's another piece to that, but I want to kind of dive in a little bit first, because when I was feeling like my whole world was falling apart, the only thing that kind of kept me going was this image that I had, that, and not even had, but like had through a feeling that there is a way that I can be in harmony with this horse. And so it was that continued to inspire me to move through all of what I perceived as struggles and challenges. And then a couple of years ago, after I'd done my second workshop for a number of people, I was talking to a lady who I just did an animal reading with, and I said something about, like what inspires us is what heals us, because when we find that thing that inspires us, it's like we'll do anything to tap into that inspiration. And in that inspiration is the truth that we need, that is healing, right? Healing is just finding our truth within something so that we can kind of be set free. And horses, as kind of an archetype, are the archetype of freedom. And so that's how I think they've kind of inspired me. And on the other side of healing is this infinite inspiration, because maybe we're never really done healing, because there's always layers and levels of deeper truth that we can find. But it's infinite, the potential that exists. Like, I have another piece of words that always come to me, and it's the power of our potential, because it's infinite, it's unlimited. And when we tap into that inspirational realm within us, it's kind of like Judy was saying, right, about what her father was saying, like, live in the moment, enjoy those things, because when you deny yourself those things, you're denying who you are. And when you do that, you can't be inspired. And it's just this cycle. And so finding that single source of inspiration, and I guess if there's one thing to share, it's that. Find what inspires you and go do that. Like, really.
So I'm going to say that's your words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Because that's how I end my interview. So you just said what you needed to say to round this out. So Judy, I'll ask you if you have some last words of wisdom to share. What would you like to say?
I would probably, second what Jess was saying, going along is follow your heart, listen to your gut. If there's something that draws your attention, go look at it. Don't wait. Don't wait. I just lost a dear friend who I've known for 40 years. He was going to retire that one day, and he didn't wake up. And it really, it stops time when like you're in that shock. And it's really made me look at, don't wait. If there's something that inspires you, like Jess said, go look at it, because there may not be a tomorrow, or we don't know. We don't know how long we have in this incarnation. So, don't just sit around like, oh, I'll wait till he calls me. Well, maybe someday I'll take a trip, down the Nile. Start planning it, or at least, when travel again.
Excellent. Love both of those words of wisdom. So I want to thank both of you ladies today. This has been excellent, and I can't wait for people to be able to watch this. There's a lot of great information. If each of you, starting with you, Judy, give your website and any other social media or contact information you'd like to share.
Oh, okay. I can be reached through my website, which is just simply judylemon.com. My Facebook is at Machete Woman. I'm also on LinkedIn. Instagram is Judy1Lemon, and let's see, Twitter, I think JudyLemon5. I think if you just Google me, start with the website. That's the easiest way to find me.
Okay. And I will put those links at the end of the interview. So
Okay.
they'll be available there.
Okay.
Okay, Jess, how can people find you? And your beautiful dog there.
Same thing with my website is jesscampmans.com. And then on Facebook, Guided by Equus with Butte Morgan Horses. And on Instagram is Jess Guided by Equus. And so I keep it kind of fairly simple so I don't have to follow too many social media links. But I love posting about everything that inspires me and has helped me on my journey, including my dog here. Yeah, so I just love connecting with people that are interested in learning more, or have a question, or just want to share an experience that they've had, because sometimes that's all we need, is to share it with somebody to know that we're not alone in it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. It's been great.
Yeah,
And we may have to do this again. All right. Have a good evening.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Bye, Jess.
Bye.